I have to throw out another David Belle quote because this one's so apt for the conversation. He told me one time, he said, parkour is like pulling 3 all-nighters in a row. So not sleeping for 3 days and then having to do the biggest jump of your life. And I want to tie this together with this idea that you made me realize is that I think the warrior spirit is the essence of parkour. And I think without the warrior spirit, I don't think it would have launched the way it has. Sam, when did you start doing parkour?
So towards the end of 2006, although I was living in France when Yamakasi came out.
Really? So you live in England, right?
Yeah.
Where in England?
So I live between Ipswich and Cambridge to people who know the area too well.
Which isn't us Americans, but...
Well, to be honest, just about everybody in England just doesn't know the areas very well anyway. Yeah. And sort of between, to get more detail, between Stowmarket and Bury St Edmunds.
Okay. How far from London?
How far from London?
Yeah.
An hour and a half.
Hour and a half. Okay. An hour and a half outside of London. And you were living in France for some reason. Why were you in France? When did you move to France?
Okay. So I was born in France.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think you told me that actually.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Continue.
So that was for the first like 4 years of my life, and then we moved over to the UK. And then I was living in Cardiff till I was about 10, and then moved back to France without speaking the language too well, which you might know is a little bit difficult.
You were speaking the language well, or you weren't speaking it well?
Weren't, because I just didn't speak French very often. I mean, my mum would speak to me in French, but it's different, you know, like when you don't want to speak it because you don't think it's cool because you're a kid.
Yeah, kids do that. I grew up, I'm here in the States, and I had a friend who was Russian, and there's a lot of, like, in my neighborhood, there's a lot of, not neighborhood, but in my city, there's a lot of people from Mexico.
Okay.
And it's amazing how much kids from other countries don't want to learn their native language.
Yes.
Like, it's not cool to learn a second language, or something.
Yeah.
But then every adult in the world wishes they could speak multiple languages. It's weird.
Yeah. I like Spanish. It's a good language. Yeah.
Well, let's get to the parkour, because I only asked you where you lived because I was curious to know about that. You said you were in France when the Yamakasi came out. You mean the movie or something else?
Yeah, when the movie came out, the first one. So why that affects my parkour is because just like all the teenagers of that area, that kind of time, I think everyone just started just like climbing everything and jumping into the gardens of their neighbors or on top of roofs and stuff like that. So it's like the first taste of parkour, and then a bit further down the line, it just kind of vibes with you.
What year? I'm looking it up right now on my phone. What year did the Yamakasi film come out? I'm going to guess 2001. That's my guess. But no, I'm going to guess 2002. 2001. 2001. Okay. Action thriller 2001.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're both the same age in truth. So.
You and I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's not tell our age. No. Let people guess.
No.
Is there any way to like tilt your screen down so you can be a little more centered on the screen for like the few people who will watch this versus like listening?
Okay.
Oh, very cool. I like that. I'll help us editing it too. Okay, so 2001. That's the pre-jump London.
Yeah.
Pre-jump London. And then you're already doing parkour. I do want to add an interesting story for people that don't know, because I moved to France in 2011 and to work with David Belle, and was doing parkour. And I kid you not, I was stopped by a lot of people in that era. Back then, it was still kind of a novel thing.
Yeah.
Every person in France, every single person that ever stopped me and asked what I was doing or had a conversation with me always said, I kid you not, "Are you doing Yamakasi?"
Yep. That was the term.
That was the term.
Yeah.
It was wild to me. I realized how influential that film was, that parkour, which started in the suburbs of Paris, right? Like about 10 miles or so outside of Paris center. They don't even call it parkour in France. They call it Yamakasi, or at least, at that time they did. I don't know what they do now.
Yeah. That was just, in terms of culture, that was just crazy. That everybody got into it. And I mean, I say got into it, it's like climbing gates and stuff like that when you're that age.
Yeah.
And then crazy.
Uh-huh. Okay, so give me a quick answer, because then I want to tie it together. You were in France in 2001.
Yeah.
When the Yamakasi came out, and then you moved back to England. What year?
2002.
Okay, 2002. Okay, so you got to be there when the Yamakasi film came out, and then you got to be in England when Jump London came out.
Yeah.
How did that compare? The cultural craze of all the youth getting into the movement.
Yeah, it was just crazy. It was just like, just watched it and you'd just be like, yeah, it's so accessible, because everything that they were doing was just, it's not like watching James Bond and you see just how high they're going and you're just like, no, that's not even possible at that age. But when you see the Jump London stuff, you just saw like more of a lower level of how to get there in the first place. And if you don't have a background in parkour anyway, you wouldn't be able to gauge the size of the jumps, especially with someone like say Johan, was it Stefan Vigou's brother, the little one?
Yeah, Johan, I think.
Yeah. Because obviously it was his kid. So you've got this, like, is it a really big jump or is it a really small jump? You can't really tell because the kid's doing it. There's also...
Oh.
Yeah. So in terms of like gauging size, you've got nothing to tell you what's really going on, but it looks like it's accessible to you and you can actually do it yourself.
Yeah. Parkour is one of those really rare urban sports, probably similar to skateboarding in a lot of ways, where people saw it and felt like they could do it. Like you don't see judo and think like, oh yeah, I'll go learn judo on my own. You don't see, I don't know, skydiving and think I'm going to go skydive on my own. But parkour is palpable, right? You see it and you think, oh, especially for like a 10-year-old, like, oh, that's what I do because I jump on my mom's couch or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, they did it in the office.
Yeah, in the office, right? One of the most iconic. Oh, that was great. Tell me this. I wanted to delve deeper on one of those questions because I'm from the United States, right?
Yeah.
Never lived in England, never been to England. I've heard that this Jump London documentary ignited this thing culturally. We didn't experience that. We had to go online and try to find some grainy version of Jump London just to watch it years and years later. And it sounds like, though, as you said, the Yamakasi launched this thing culturally in France.
Yeah.
And then Jump London launched something culturally in Britain.
Yeah.
How did that energy compare?
So when Jump London came out was what, 2004?
Yeah, probably. I'll look it up. But yeah, I think so. I was going to say 2003, 2004.
Yeah. So I watched it, I think, live on TV. But at the time, I was still doing stuff at school and it wasn't really my jam, but I was very, very impressed by it. So there was...
You weren't impressed by it?
No, I was impressed by it.
You were impressed. Okay, you were impressed. Okay.
Yeah,
2003 it says here. Okay.
I mean, I think maybe my reaction might have been, oh, look, they're doing Yamakasi. I don't know.
You had been, the idea had been seeded in your mind.
Yeah.
For the rest of the culture, they probably thought it was brand new.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, when I moved back to the UK in 2002, I left my house to go and live with a friend. So it's kind of it's a bit of a in terms of reliance and where you're going to go with new sort of like hobbies and stuff like that. Your mind might be a bit different, if you see what I'm saying.
Actually, I don't understand what you're saying. You went to live with a friend in 2002?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, life in France was getting a bit tough as a teenager, and I just wanted a new start. And became friends with a guy over the summer.
Mm.
His family, they knew my uncle, and I just took the chance and moved in with them, and then went to school and did all of that, and then got with a girl, and well, you know how it goes. Just yeah,
Life happens. What's something this? One thing I was hoping that we could talk about was the differences between, oh, I don't know, the parkour culture in England and the United States.
Okay.
You know, we had some cursory conversations about that earlier. Something in that domain, whether it was culture, whether it was regulation and organizations. Obviously, this is a great segue because there was this cultural explosion with Jump London.
Yes.
So I've heard. We never had that in the States. It's kind of been this slow thing.
Yeah.
You know, was anyway. So I'm curious to know like different energies between the countries when it comes to parkour and how that relates to the history of parkour being introduced to those cultures in those countries. And so I wanted to see if we can talk about that and see what we can dig into.
Okay. I mean, when I started up, and around about that time, I think the English culture was a very much forum culture.
Formal?
A forum.
Forum culture. Oh, you mean the parkour? Yeah. Same as the United States. Yeah. We had the forums. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there was the Worldwide Jam website, and there'd be like one really important jam a year where everyone goes up to the Peak District, and just everybody just jumps and does conditioning all the time. That was kind of it was people were trying to be social about what they were doing, but essentially everything that everybody was talking about, at least in this part of the country that I know of or knew of, was stuff that you could find on the forums. If you see what I mean. Yeah.
Right. We had Urban Free Flow was the biggest forum, from my understanding.
That one I'm not sure, because like it's hard to go back to whether it's the Urban Free Flow forum or the Worldwide Jam thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, from the United States, I had seen the Worldwide Jam forum. I feel like they made some t-shirts or some pants or something with their name on it. But in the United States, it was Urban Free Flow. They seemed to dominate the culture. They seemed to have all the athletes. They seemed to be the hub. They seemed to be where everybody was. But I got into parkour in 2006. So we're talking 2006, 2007, 2008, that time frame when Urban Free Flow feels like it's dominating. So maybe in the beginning, 2004, 2005, 2006, maybe it was a couple different places.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it was. I couldn't say that there's maybe some groups on like MySpace, I think, at the time.
Oh, yeah. MySpace. Lovely platform.
Yeah.
What about this? You mentioned people conditioning at these jams. And this is something that I think you and I have talked about a little bit. Let me introduce it with some things that I've seen, and then you can respond and tell me your take. So when parkour was relatively new, from my perspective in the United States, we were all trying to figure out how to do it and how to become really good at it.
Yeah.
And in my recollection, the leaders in proclaiming how to do it well and how to get better at it were, from my perspective in the United States, Parkour Generations in England, and then Apex Movement and Ryan Ford here in the United States. And they had kind of this, I don't want to say a partnership, but they were very friendly. Parkour Generations were doing their rendezvous events where people would show up and train. Apex Movement and some of these American parkour guys kind of got on board and they were championing the Yamakasi cause, and it caused a lot of fighting because I said no, parkour is from David Belle, and these guys were like, no, parkour was founded by 9 people. And I would say, you guys are freaking crazy. Those guys are awful. They're like a shadow of David Belle. It's founded by David. And so there's all this fighting and like people trying to posture for positioning in the community. Like, we trained with the founders. And then like, no, you didn't. It's like, yes, we did. And blah, blah, blah. Anyway, all I said to say is that these groups that you could say, in some ways, I'm not going to say pioneered because I don't think their way stuck. So they were kind of like this trail that failed, in my opinion. But this group that led the way, I'm being pretty mean to them, but I mean, I'm also being honest. Like, I think their way sucks, and I think that they tried something that didn't quite work, which is fine. I've tried things that didn't work. But the point is this: they were very heavy on the physical training.
Yeah.
Like quadrupedal movement for 100 yards, like tons of push-ups, tons of pull-ups, that type of thing. So was this your experience in England in the early days? And or how did that evolve, and what were the factions, etc.?
Yeah, I think when I first started teaching and stuff, I was very much conditioning, because
really,
I come from a background where it's a very martial art background that I've got, and it's, for example, applying the principles of the Book of Five Rings by like Japanese sword fighting of the, I don't know, like the 1500s or something like that. Don't quote me on that, by the way. That is probably quite far off. But anyway, these are guys that before you could even pick up a sword, they would make you walk around the mat like hundreds of times. I mean, yeah. So it was that kind of like mentality to begin with, but.
For you had that mentality in the beginning.
A little bit, yeah. That's the way that I wanted to view.
Okay.
But I realized after a while that you lose students if you do that, because like you can't keep students; they'll never come back if it's not fun. So yeah, you condition for like 2/3 of the class. And then just so they can have a little bit of fun, it's just not quite enough, And I think, I think for the first 3 or 4 years, I was a bit too hard on the conditioning side. It's very much a parkour gen kind of more on that side of things. But I realized after a while that it just didn't work. Yeah, I mean, I think I lost some work with the army, actually, teaching the army how to do parkour because I was too hard on them. Just completely knackered them out. And all they really wanted to do is just try and do some flips and stuff and just have a bit of fun. Because they're already doing all this physical stuff as part of their job. Like, why would they want to do more work instead of fun? Yeah, so that's a perspective I got to just after a few years, I think.
What's interesting is I would think that it was similar to me. So, the reason I started parkour. This episode is brought to you by one of the most storied brands in parkour history, Take Flight. Take Flight started as the world's first parkour clothing company in 2008, and they went on to work with parkour legends, including David Belle, Pasha Putkins, Toby Seeger from Store, and many others. They now make some of the world's best parkour shoes, and their second-gen Stealth Ultra X is just about the most comfortable shoe out there. That's great for high-impact, techie movement, and even just casual wear. Definitely check these shoes out, as well as all of Take Flight's made for parkour products. Use the link in our description or head on over to their site at tkflt.com and use the code 10 to get 10% off any order. Support them as they support us, as we support the parkour community. The reason I started parkour, long story short, and this isn't a comprehensive explanation, but I saw this guy named David Belle. I saw that he was super fit and super strong. I'd been a scrawny kid, and I said, I want to be like that. So for me, it wasn't a mindset of, oh, I want to jump around, although that was part of it for sure, because it was cool. But I wanted the physical transformation. And so for me, parkour was about this really intense training method. And when I started to do it with other people that found parkour through me or through viral videos instead of through David Belle's kind of videos, they seemed to have more of a fun approach. Yeah. And out of the fun approach came jams and community. And I never vibed with that group because for me, it didn't really make sense. It was like, I want to train really hard. And nobody else wanted to train really hard. And anyway, maybe Urban Free Flow Volume 3 with Stefan Vigru. He talks about training like 1,000 squats a day and he talks about all these things. And I took inspiration from that. Yeah. But that really wasn't the mainstream, I think, draw to the sport.
I think there was some serious issues that you're going to tell a load of people that 1,000 squats in one day is like, you've got to be really tough to do it. But I don't think they ever really, like, people should consider the fact that, you're not there to tell a person who's watching, you shouldn't do that every day, because all that leads to is tendonitis. You won't be able to do parkour for more than maybe 6 months. If you do that every day, it's just going to kill your legs, it's not a healthy way of practicing either.
Yeah. It's that warrior mentality. And, one of my favorite quotes from David Belle is he said, parkour is a training method for warriors.
Yeah.
And I always thought, whoa, man, that's the idea that resonated with me. But if you look at parkour today, it has nothing to do with a warrior mentality. You get a couple tracers, a couple organizations that train really tough, but it's about freedom and fun and of course challenges. And believe me, like what some of the tracers in the world do today are world-class challenges that a warrior couldn't do. Think of like traditional, whether it's samurai or Roman warrior or gladiator, they couldn't do it. So bravo for the physical achievement, but the warrior mentality doesn't seem to be a part of the parkour culture that much.
Okay.
What do you think? Do you have, what is your opinion on that?
So honestly, I've been reading some stuff recently where it said that like kung fu is being badly translated. So when you say that kung fu is just martial art, that's where it's wrong. Kung fu means anything that's achieved through through difficulty, if you see what I'm saying. So for example, a person that's really good at playing the piano, that's kung fu. Do you see what I mean? And so the goal of it is to become the best version of yourself. If you start to sort of like think about that a little bit more, and you just think, well, actually, I can do that with both parkour, martial arts, flips, whatever, and become the best version of myself. Maybe actually that all of them will work together. And there's no real need to put a label on it anymore. If you see what I'm saying.
Well, I agree. Do we disagree on anything here?
Don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. I was simply commenting on this idea that this training mentality you had, I also had. Yeah. And it didn't catch on.
No.
In the parkour world.
No. And it's worse because it's not, you can't make money out of it. I mean, just let's face it, if you're going to bore people with something that's too physical, that's just, you're already eliminating about 50% of the people that are interested, because some of them just don't want to do anything like just that level of physical. So they're already out the door by their second class,
Sure.
So yeah, you're much better off just showing them what they can achieve by by either doing it yourself in front of them and giving them like little bits of that the way. In my opinion, obviously.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, look, how many, I always, this was so dumb. I was like a young 20-year-old kid, early 20s. But I said parkour, this was in my mindset. I was like, parkour's never going to be big. This is literally what I told myself. I said, parkour will never be big because nobody wants to bleed. And what I noticed is every time I did parkour, I bled, like physically. I would scratch my hands or scrape my knees or something. Like the first 10 sessions I ever did in my life, I came back with a bloody something, elbow or knee or whatever. And I thought, man, I was like, this is really tough.
Yeah.
And I knew intuitively that most people weren't made to have that level of physical, maybe challenge in their life. And so I was like, parkour's never going to take off. But then, of course, I grew to learn that parkour was fun and people adopted it that way. So I changed my view. But, the original parkour way, that how I conceptualized it was what you're saying was it was tough. And I recognized that most people wouldn't adopt that way.
True. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be said about pushing yourself in a difficult kind of circumstance as well. Because I mean, you can't just do parkour when the weather's nice, for example.
Mm.
I mean, it is fun to train in the ice or in the rain, or it's a different kind of movement, and it's a different kind of achievement as well. It's not just landing; it's landing and making sure that your balance is perfectly where it touches whatever it is you're landing on.
Yeah. I have to throw out another David Belle quote because this one's so apt for the conversation. He told me one time, he said, parkour is like pulling 3 all-nighters in a row.
Right.
So not sleeping for 3 days and then having to do the biggest jump of your life. And I want to tie this together with this idea that you made me realize is that I think the warrior spirit is the essence of parkour. And I think without the warrior spirit, I don't think it would have launched the way it has. It needed some type of fire, some type of molten ember that then was able to burn, spread and burn down the forest. And I think that's what David Belle had, and he got that from his father, obviously, from Raymond. It's okay that's dissipated, I think the core of it, though, is that warrior spirit, is the training method for warriors, is the doing your biggest jump after not sleeping for 3 days. I think that's it, kind of this core ethos, this core energy of the movement that launched it.
Yeah.
But it's clearly not ubiquitous in the parkour world today.
Yeah.
Do you have a response to that or any thoughts on that?
The way I train might be a little bit, I think, like you don't necessarily see what's behind the big videos and stuff like that. So, or if you train with a person once a week, you don't see what actually happens on the other days of the week. So, for example, if I'm training by myself, it will be a totally different type of training than it is with my friends, for example. We push ourselves in different kind of ways, and that's really cool because you can take other people's sort of like views on things and just think, yeah, I've never thought of it that way, so let's develop that and be a bit more creative. But say for training by myself, I'll just spend, I don't know, half an hour maybe just doing toe precisions or something like that. So, but then you don't necessarily talk to other people about that sort of thing. I mean, I'm talking to you about it right now, but yeah, I like to think that I don't see all the back training of other people, so there might actually be a lot more of this sort of warrior kind of way.
Fascinating. You make a great point. one thing that I realized in this conversation is that one of the things that has changed in parkour, in the United States at least, I want to keep coming back to us being in different countries because I think that's important.
Yeah.
One of the things that's changed a lot is the demographic. So when parkour first launched in the United States and was finding its footing, and when the gyms first started, and I started one of the first parkour gyms in the United States, it was a lot of high school kids, maybe late middle school. I think that was really the focus of the demographic. And at least in my classes, we even had college students. So we had college students, some adults, a lot of high school students, and a few middle school students.
Yeah.
Nowadays, if you go to a parkour gym in the United States, it's mostly children. And by children, I mean under 18. But in the parkour gym sense, I mean you have the majority are not even in high school yet, so under 14.
Okay.
And so it's a different demographic, which brings a different energy, a different intentionality, a different vision, a different focus, a different desire, and that can't be ignored, I think, in terms of the energy. But you don't see that on Instagram, right? You don't have a bunch of 8-year-olds posting videos. There's a couple of them. You have people like, you have the pros posting videos. And so what I'm saying is that there's probably a lot of cultures. There's probably a lot of subcultures, and we haven't done a good job at parkour.com or in other groups of probably exploring and understanding all those subcultures, because the gym has 100 students and they're all between 8 and 12 years old is going to be one culture. And then the guys like you that train themselves and have a tough training session alone and then go out on a jam with friends and push yourselves, maybe you have a different culture. America versus Russia versus France versus England.
Yes.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. I mean, most of the people that I've come across training, it's going to be sort of like, I feel like there's like a gap between these sort of, I would say 25s to late 20s. Like of a few years where there's not that many people of those left. Does that make sense?
You're saying there's a lot of people that are under 25 and a lot of people that are 30 and over, but there's a gap maybe where there's not a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, over 30s, I wouldn't say it's like a big community, but there is still people there, and maybe for others they might come across as like peers and people to look up to or ask if you need any kind of like advice on anything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's definitely, it feels like there's every so often it misses a few years, and don't really see why.
The lost generation.
Yeah.
What do you let's do a very English thing, although it's very global. What do you think of Storer, their rise? Do you know any of the athletes? Any thoughts on that? And if there's not any, we'll just go to the next topic.
I used to be quite close with a person that was. Do you know Jason Matten?
Oh, I'm gonna say no, but the name is super familiar.
Okay.
I probably know him or know of him or something.
Yeah. So yeah, we were quite close. I mean, nice guy. Unfortunately, I can't socialize so much in person with too many people because of epilepsy. So it does cut down the amount of like traveling and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But the actual guys themselves, I don't really know them personally. I think, they could have got in touch with more people in this area when they came to Ipswich.
When they what? When they came to town, or when they were blowing up?
When they came to Ipswich, they did but I mean, that's not exactly begrudging much, is it, to be honest?
That brings up a funny story, because we have a parkour gym out here, which was started by one of my former students.
Right.
And we're pretty close. He messages me all the time, and he sells Take Flight shoes, and awesome guy, amazing guy. He flew Jason Paul out a few months ago for a workshop.
Oh yeah.
Right? Didn't tell anybody about it except like his students.
Okay.
Literally, I was like, what, dude? Like, what? Like, what? You brought him all the way from wherever he is, Germany or Thailand or wherever he is nowadays, flying around, and you just like didn't tell anybody? Like, what? And so, and of course, Jason didn't tell anybody. So I only found out about it because I saw a video of Jason in his gym, and I thought that gym's like 30 minutes away from me. Like, what? When did he go there? My friend's like, oh yeah, we brought him out for a workshop. Anyway, the point is like, people are going to do what they're going to do. And, if Store wants to go to a town and not tell anybody for a secret mission or a secret workshop, it's like, well, more power to him, I guess,
Yeah,
but it would be fun to see him,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, do your thing, but I think, yeah, I mean, I quite like some of their videos. I think they're very talented guys, which works both for them and against them, to be honest.
Really? You think it works against them?
The only thing that I think it could work against them is it might just sort of like if they make something look too easy, for example, you might get other people that might try it, if you see what I'm saying. And
sure.
Yeah, you don't want people just like turning up thinking they can do something because they've made it look so simple.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, whereas it's not. They've quite clearly they got big jumps, good landings.
Yeah. Could we talk about maybe one cultural aspect of parkour in England that's different, or in Britain maybe, that's different from the United States? And you have something called Parkour UK.
Yeah.
What I've been hearing about them more or less recently. I've been hearing a lot of negative stuff about them. I'm not here to cast shade on anybody, except sometimes, like I did earlier. But I mean, not like maliciously,
That's what monkeys do, isn't it?
What? So what?
You said,
Monkey?
well, you said you didn't want to cast shit on people. Well, monkeys.
Monkeys do it. Yeah. Well, look, there's a lot of people I don't like, but I've also learned in my time that there's a lot of people that don't like me. In fact, there's way more people that don't like me than I don't like. And even the people I don't like, I've just realized that we're all humans, and maybe we made mistakes, or maybe we just misunderstand each other.
Yeah.
Or maybe we just have different values or priorities, and that's totally okay. And so I have grace with everybody. So maybe there's someone I'm not like a huge fan of, but like I'll talk to anybody anytime. So I know I don't want to be someone that maliciously tries to undermine someone. I don't want someone doing that to me. And I don't know their story, But so when I throw shade on people, it's just kind of like subtle. Like, like Ryan Ford, like, dude, he was a pioneer in the American scene. I didn't like his way. He was a jerk to me a couple times, but he did awesome stuff. And, to me, that's the balance you have. So I've heard only negative stuff about Parkour UK. But I'd like to have some good things to say about them. What can you tell me about the organization, where it came from, and maybe where the drama is in regards to them right now in England, or the UK, rather? This episode is brought to you by Insta360 Flow. Insta360 Flow is a company that makes AI stabilizing gimbals and AI stabilizing cameras for you to film parkour and to film your adventures. We've received one at parkour.com, and it is absolutely amazing. You'll feel the quality right out of the box, and after the first use, you'll ask yourself, why didn't I have this sooner? You basically attach your phone to the stabilizer, and you immediately have a world-class gimbal, perfect for anybody making a parkour video. Or if you just travel and like to take some snaps, click the link in our bio to check out their products. We get a small kickback from every purchase if you use the link. So please check them out. It helps us immensely to keep the podcast going and bring on amazing guests for you. What can you tell me about the organization, where it came from, and maybe where the drama is in regards to them right now in England, or the UK rather?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been able to dig deep enough in the current drama. I mean, I can tell you how I feel about them in terms of, on a personal level. I mean, my son's school, for example, is having a parkour workshop, which is going to be taught by a person that used to pay me to do workshops for him. That's just. But as far as I know, he's not really from a parkour background. But that's okay for Parkour UK. So I think there's a genuine. Maybe it's to do with the standards, because I mean the standards in people that actually do parkour, and it always has been really, is that you're not going to go to someone's gym or a class in parkour if the teacher doesn't come from a parkour background, or can't tell you anything about. They can't give any teaching points. Where does that really leave you in terms of, like, even if it's a freestyle session, for example, and you're trying new stuff, but if you get it completely wrong and you hurt yourself, how would they even know how to react to that? Do you know what I mean? Like, what does a person that doesn't do parkour know about an ankle thing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they probably haven't experienced it. Yeah. And I think you should at least have an experience in what you're teaching. Because how can you even give people proper teaching points in how to move?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that without over pushing.
Let me add some context from what I've heard, and then I'm going to push back on your view simply because I want to play devil's advocate, because I've thought a little bit about this too. So what I've heard, which is pretty cursory, like very, top, nothing too deep, is that Parkour UK more or less prides himself very much on these training standards and these certifications that experienced tracers look at and think is misaligned with parkour's, method or intention or potential or style, something like that.
Yeah.
And if you somehow work through the years and pass all these certifications, which are incredibly difficult and which don't have necessarily anything to do with parkour specifically, then you're approved by Parkour UK to teach parkour in the UK. This is what I'm hearing, more or less. Is that at least somewhat accurate?
I haven't done the qualification with Parkour UK, so I wouldn't be able to say. Some people have said that it's kind of like it's worked up from the Parkour Gen qualifications.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's the view that you're just, all you're trying to do is just like bring a new sport to an area, but just, I think people are just annoyed by you feel like it's not 100%, something's not 100% honest if it's trying to give it the name of something that it's not really been taught in that method. I don't know if I actually answered your question with that.
You added some context. I'm looking up a conversation I had with somebody, I forget his name, but he used to be a coach for Parkour UK, was very verbal about it, and then recently said, I can't talk about it anymore publicly because Parkour UK is like threatening legal action or something. I looked at my Instagram, trying to remember his name. because I'm basically repeating what I understand him saying.
It's okay. You
Uh,
don't have to say his name. I think
I won't say his name. I got him right here though. He seemed like a really cool guy that cared about parkour,
deeply.
uh, deeply cared about parkour, and had tried to influence Parkour UK's direction by becoming a part of the organization. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, you know what? He's like, I don't agree with them, but I'm gonna stick with them to understand them better and help them out because parkour needs this to be right. And then they just kind of stonewalled him and just discarded him type thing. So he started speaking out about it. And then,
Yeah. I mean,
anyway, I'm hoping to have him on the podcast actually.
yeah. All right. Okay. That's cool. I mean, very, very good Traceur. Like, um, yeah. From what I understand, that's hopefully going to lead to there being a bit of competition between Parkour UK and maybe some other associations that might pop up. Hopefully, because
Sure.
that can always, the only thing that can, well, it can make all sorts of issues. But usually what happens in terms of like business and stuff, the more competition you have, quite often the standards do go up with it as well.
Totally.
So that's what I'm really hoping for. And if we're talking about the same person, then the standards will, he's doing the right thing
Sure.
to get the standards going upwards. So yeah.
What about this though? And this was my concern. This has been my concern for years with Parkour UK. And this is from across the pond where I literally know nothing about what they're doing. But I heard somehow that they had been approved by the government to be the governing body of parkour.
Yeah.
And the problem is once you're that, you basically have a monopoly and you've circumvented the competition potential, right? I mean, we have this in the US with a bunch of government agencies that have a monopoly on accreditation and things like that. And so there's no competition. Like I'll use a very innocuous example, colleges, right? Like how do you get accredited as a college in the United States, right? Well, there's like a board, I believe, that, more or less, I could be slightly off on this, but I heard about this the other day. There's like a group in the government that says who's accredited to give certain classes and who can give an education, right?
Yeah.
Well, what if they're captured by the universities, right? And then it's like, well, how do you get accredited by this agency that then won't accreditize you and or has completely, wonky ideas about what education is or what subjects are important, et cetera. And you can't compete, right? You have to compete under something else. Like say, well, we have a college, but we can't give you a degree. It's like, well, good luck competing with colleges that can give you a degree when the labor market's looking for a degree. You know what I mean? So it's like you chop off the legs of competition, and that's not good for anybody. And so if you can't have a parkour class with the word parkour, unless Parkour UK agrees with you, then that's a problem, right? They've institutionally captured the brand such that you have to say, well, our class is free running or our class is urban movement or something else that then doesn't resonate in the same way.
Yeah.
And that's the detriment, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, what really happened is from the moment that it became Parkour UK, it meant that if you had a different qualification, you couldn't get insurance for parkour.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It became an insurance issue, and then obviously no one's going to employ someone who doesn't have public liability insurance, because accidents do happen. And so yeah, because previous to that, you could have things like exercise to music qualifications. You could have that and be able to teach parkour technically, because it's got all the components that you will need for your parkour classes. So you can then explain to your insurance that, well, because all the elements of parkour are technically covered by exercise to music, you can then get insurance for that, and then go, yeah, well, I'm doing a parkour class because of all of these bits cover it, But then now the people that are going to employ you, they're going to be like, so do you have the insurance that says Parkour UK, or has Parkour UK vetted you, kind of thing, first.
Wow.
Yeah. So essentially, I would assume it's put a few people out of a job, and it might have upset quite a few people.
What upsets me, I'm not even, and I'm like 5,000 miles away,
Yeah.
Like, believe me, like nobody's more ardent about what parkour is. There's very few people in the world, maybe 10, that are more ardent about what parkour is than me. Like, I learned from David Belle. Like, I have a vested interest in the lineage of Raymond Bell to David Bell to Adam Dunlap, of this discipline, But even irrespective of, you could say, my benefit from that type of lineage is a belief in what it is. And so to see people that don't respect that belief is quite maddening to me.
No.
So yeah, it upset a lot of people for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I stopped teaching just before all of that came into the forefront.
Really?
Yeah. And I have to say, like, the qualifications, like exercise to music, for example, like it was a level 3 qualification. Really hard stuff that you had to learn in terms of theory and stuff like that. And yeah, you had to learn to actually do exercise to music and teach a class, which yeah, is a bit different.
Tell me this then, though. Like, in your opinion, should parkour be this term that anyone can use anytime and then the market fleshes out who knows what they're doing? Or should there be a body or a board that says parkour is this is how you get certified, this is what you have to do to teach it? What end of the spectrum are you on there?
Well, I think there should be more options, just like in terms of what you need to do to get insured.
Okay.
Because I think, yeah, you could go with the Parkour Gen qualification. We even wrote up our own version of a qualification for teaching as well. You should be able to go to any one of those and show people that it's say do you have NVQs or something similar to that in the US? So like
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so like the theory of level 3 theory, I think, is sort of like what you need to know to be a nurse, kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, which is the same for a masseur. So you should have like a level 3 of a few different things, or a level 4, whatever, and that would be decided by everybody. And then from then onwards, you should be able to get insurance, and then maybe teach whoever wants to employ you.
Huh. Interesting. So, but who should be at the top of that ladder deciding what someone has to have a level 3 NVQ? Like, who should that be? Is it a vote of the public? Is it chosen representatives of the sport? Whatever that means. It's so ambiguous. It's hard to say, right?
I mean, if we want to be totally like parkour about it, why not be French and have a republic? And get everybody's opinion on it, and just see what everybody wants, or try and get in touch with as many people as possible and just see what the overall. I mean, that's asking for a lot, but
it's asking for a lot. And it's like, the United States Constitution, right?
Yeah.
Was this time when a bunch of young dudes, because they were all like 20s or something like that, came together and had this idea, and they had enough character and fortitude and shared past or something that they were able to have this document that founded a country, right?
Yeah.
But since then, everybody in power has constantly been trying to erode the Constitution in various ways. And so you like nothing can be sacred over time to prevent greed and corruption. I mean, there is one thing, it's called Bitcoin, but that's like a different discussion, which I'm very passionate about. But even parkour isn't. Like, it can still be captured institutionally or financially or governmentally or something like that. And so, but what I hear you saying is that at the very least, there would be it'd be awesome if that constitution could be founded. So if the community itself could come together, because I think right now there probably is the shared experience and the character and the fortitude to make something that's fair, that's representative of the discipline, as much as the community and culture sees it collectively. And then that could propagate pretty well over time, as opposed to letting a couple fringe people decide what the rules are.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Uh,
A load of people. When I say republic, perhaps I was thinking more like Star Wars. You know, like everyone.
How so?
Well, you know, when they've got the like big like floating little bits, and you've got people from every single planet and stuff like that. Yes, it'd be like that. So
that'd be great. I do think like the Venn diagram of views about parkour.
Yeah.
If you took everyone in the community, where everybody overlapped would be a pretty cool spot. Because we're not all going to agree on competitions or the training curriculum or whatever it may be. But I think there's probably, at this point in time, there's enough shared experience, enough shared ideology that if I had to bet money, I would say that if you had this collective kind of amalgamation of ideas, it'd be good enough for people to accept. Nobody would agree with it 100%, but it'd be good enough for people to accept and move ahead with, like this kind of Star Wars Republic, Senate, whatever they had in those movies.
The forum. Just go back to the forums. But at least it would give us a chance to maybe have the opinions of young people as well. You know, the people that feel that they don't have an opinion or a vote in general life, they can still put their point forwards. You know, because it's not all about the teachers; it's also about the student. So, if you're not happy with the standard of your teaching, you should be able to voice that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, this brings us back to Parkour.com. And unfortunately, we're almost running out of time. But what's interesting about Parkour.com is, you know, within the parkour world, it's, you could say, a brand like any other, right?
Yeah.
But outside of the parkour world, it's the parkour brand, because its name is so powerful, right? So if your name's Samuel Thomas and you're like, hey, I want to, I don't know, find out some parkour stuff, you know where to go. You know the teams, the pros, the friends, you have the relationships. If you have no connections in the parkour world and you want some, and you want to figure out what to do or where to train or what's right or what's wrong, what's up or what's down, then when you search online for parkour, you find Parkour.com. And so to me, what I've realized for a long time is, like, Parkour.com, whether people like it or not, will play a pivotal piece in parkour's future. Because at the end of the day, the website can say whatever you want about parkour, and everybody outside the parkour world will believe it, right? So even if we said something ridiculous, like if we said, like, this is going to sound awful, if we said Adam Dunlap is the founder of parkour, right? If that was the claim that Parkour.com made, right? It's like, just kill me. It's the most blasphemous thing I could ever say. But let's say I said that, right? There'd be a lot of people that would believe it. From outside the parkour world. Right? But nobody in the, go ahead, what?
The next generation would probably be fighting with the older generation.
Right. They'd just be fighting, like, so you start a war, like, who's the founder, and like, I don't know, with AI today, you could like take all David Belle's videos, you could like put my face over his videos, and like, you know, like you'd have like all this, oh my gosh, it'd be crazy, you know? I think Parkour.com has a lot of power to sway public opinion about what parkour is. And that could be used in a nefarious way or in a selfish way. And my vision and my heart is that it's used in a way to represent the true community.
Yeah.
understanding that not everyone's going to agree, but understanding that there's a power there and a connection and a brotherhood of some kind, and that should be represented. It should be some sort of communal type universal ideology in some capacity. And what that means is, if you get a rogue organization or a rogue country saying what parkour is, and the parkour community doesn't agree with them, FIG is a great example. That's been, of course, on this debate for years. If something like that comes along, then what parkour.com will take a stand against it.
Yeah.
And then my hope is that as we continue to build our network and our community and our partners, then that'll help parkour propagate in the right direction, because it won't be able to be captured, right? Like, we'll take FIG as the bad guy, even though I've heard recently that they're better than people think, and I'm kind of indifferent. It's a long, it's a long, nuanced discussion. But let's say they're like, no, we own parkour now internationally. We're going to put it in the Olympics, and we don't care what, we have all the money, and parkour can't do anything about it, right? Then when parkour.com says, we do not recognize FIG, and it's clearly on the website, then when people come to the website to find out about parkour and they see, oh, wait a second, FIG isn't what we thought it was, then there's at least some semblance of a potential internet-based counterbalance to some capture that has happened at some level of the physical world. I think that's a powerful thing. That's invaluable. Like, you literally can't buy that. I mean, you could with like $1 billion, but like, at some level, you can't buy the attention span of potentially every person on the planet to influence their view of parkour. And so people have asked me, like, would you sell parkour.com, blah, blah, blah. And we've had it evaluated, like, financially, what it's worth. My thought is, like, I don't think there's enough money to get me to sell it, because it's not like you're getting money. It's like you're now opening the Pandora's box that parkour can be whatever the owner says it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not a place that we want parkour to be.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys in England are fighting that a little bit in a way that the United States isn't fighting it. You're kind of fighting what is parkour and who controls it.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of empathy and compassion for that fight. Without knowing, much about it, I just know that that's a difficult place to be, and I empathize with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, on the front of like FIG, for example, gymnastics has got kind of historically has got quite a bad sort of like reputation. I mean, where do you think a pommel horse came from? Or a horse?
No idea.
It's in the name. It comes from equestrian. Like, all the stuff that you do on a pommel horse, it was stuff that was done on horses first. But it's no longer, no one really knows that is equestrian type of movement. It's just gymnastic. So will they do that to parkour? So even with sort of the equipment that they put down, will they just eventually go gymnastics? When it doesn't sell or work for them quite so well, because people get a bit bored of stuff, because they do, perhaps they might just go, gymnastics, stick in the past.
Sure. But what do they say, right? Like, history is written by the victors.
Yeah.
And once you realize how pernicious that idea is, you realize how important it is sometimes to protect the truth and stand for the truth.
Yeah.
Because with enough time, you can change anything. You can change history. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've got to tell it how it is. I mean, and also that concept as well, you need to constantly push towards people so that they don't just turn up to all these places and go, well, you're telling 100% the truth. You have to question it. That's part of becoming a person that knows how to develop their analysis. You must question the things that you do, and it makes you better at whatever it is that you do. So if you question the efficiency of, say, your comp or cat pass, you'll probably find a better, like a way of making it better, really. And yeah, I think we're going to get that in parkour as well, though. Hopefully, people questioning things. I think parkour.com can stand for that. Because if it's telling a different story, then people are going to be like, well, which one's the real one? Yeah. So, yeah, that does sound like a very pivotal point.
Samuel, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I wish we could talk more. I feel like we're just getting into the good stuff, like we've just finally connected, but we're out of time today. So, is there anything that maybe we didn't cover? We could tease the audience for our next conversation, or anything you'd like to summarize or give a shout out to, etc.
I mean, we could, in the future, we could probably like cover the reason for doing a lot of the stuff that I've researched on my blogs or something like that. Like different ways of conditioning. Or yeah. I mean, you know the blog with the earplugs.
Yes, you wrote an article about this. I've never even had never heard of the idea.
Right. On Facebook, there was a.
Well, yeah, let's do this. Next time we talk, I'd be interested to run through these ideas of yours, whether they're training ideas, parkour specific or general or other. And then if you'd be open to it, I'd also be curious to hear your story about your experience with epilepsy and parkour, because I think that's a story that can connect with the people in and out of the parkour world in a really unique way.
Yeah.
And I'd love to delve deeper into your personal story in that capacity.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't finish saying.
Yeah, please do.
Was a deaf Traceur, a woman who left me some comments on Facebook about that one. So we were talking about vibration and a few things about, and just had a bit of a back and forth. It was just a really, really interesting kind of like perspectives I'd never really considered. Really.
She was a deaf tracer or just a deaf athlete or person?
I think she was a deaf Traceur.
Really?
Yeah.
And she left you some comments about training with earplugs, and that brought you around this idea.
No, I'd already put my blog on, I think it was like parkour research.
Uh-huh.
And she came back and left a comment after reading the blog. She liked the blog and everything like that. And she said, but I'm deaf and stuff like that. And I just, yeah, you have to talk to a person like that. If, just this differences is crazy. So yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that next time and your experience with it, and delve into your other ideas as well, because how we connected was I found your blog and thought it was quite good. And so that's how we started a relationship.
Yeah. And it's been great talking to you, and it's just like, it flies by, so.
It does. Well, for those listening, you can find Sam on Instagram. His handle is Sam the Parkour Guy. And are there other links out there for you? Are you Sam the Parkour Guy on Twitter as well?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
I think the same on TikTok or something very, very similar. And there's a Facebook page which has like some really, really old tutorials, like proper, like the French, they love something that's nice and farcical. So that kind of thing.
Well, We'll include all the links in the description, everyone, so you can check those out. Find Sam. He's making tutorials now. Again, he's got those old ones, but he's making some new ones. And so he's somebody with a great heart, a vast experience, and we're very thankful to have him here today.
Thanks for having me.